The next 3 videos that you'll be watching from me will probably be the most important videos that you watch on YouTube about cryptocurrencies within the next 2 weeks. So turn on the notification bell. Today specifically, we'll be going through a lot of technical analysis for Bitcoin. And then we have a couple of breaking news to cover as well. I've not been around for the past few days because I'm about to do my A-level exam, so I have been studying on the side, but I also wanted to take a quick break and just kind of consolidate my analysis and understand what is happening on the charts with a more in-depth view. So I think it's super important to do that sometimes, just to step away and focus on the macro picture. But if you smash that like button, turn on the notification bell to not miss out on the upcoming 2 more videos. Then we can start off straight away with the short-term analysis for Bitcoin because we do have so much to cover. And by the end of this video, I'm going to be telling you if right now is potentially a bull case scenario where Bitcoin continues higher, or is Bitcoin going to fall further? So let's start off with the immediate short term. Now, the last time that I left off Bitcoin, we were here. So not much has changed at all. We were talking about an ascending triangle pattern, and Bitcoin did end up going all the way to 65.4K. So if you did decide to open it long, then congrats on the short term. But right now we're just floating above this line of support and this line of resistance. There is not too much volatility. So to give an idea on where Bitcoin can potentially go, honestly speaking, this chart is what is intriguing me the most. Now, this period for Bitcoin reminds me a lot of what took place after the US spot ETF launches, which were in January 11th. So Bitcoin rallied up to up to $47,000 and had a major fall in price because, well, firstly, the narrative was over, the Bitcoin halving was still a little bit further away, and the market was exhausted. That was the situation with Bitcoin. So Bitcoin consolidated for a long amount of time, had an inverse head and shoulders pattern, and eventually broke towards the upside. Now, this happened actually as I got back from Japan. This was like my first vacation in like 2 years. So during this vacation, Bitcoin was down and we were consolidating, and I came back from Japan right around here. And this was when we opened our long position over on Bitflex at 43.25K. We talked about the inverse head and shoulders pattern, and we've been long ever since. So I just want to take a moment to congratulate you all, because that is the point where we first longed Bitcoin. Now, as you can see, Bitcoin is forming something much, much more similar. Now, granted, we're not forming this inverse head and shoulders after a major dump towards the downside, which would have been a better circumstance, in my opinion, for the inverse head and shoulders to have much more of a positive impact in terms of price action. But that's okay. At this point, we had the Hong Kong spot ETFs getting launched. There was an underwhelming of performance in the market. Yes, we had like $300 million on the first day, but that's not true. The case was that these ETFs bought Bitcoin prior to launching, which is pretty popular in Asia. So people were a bit frustrated after we saw like $4.8 million only of inflows to the ETFs, and now we're getting outflows actually. We will have a look in just a second. And Bitcoin kind of ran out of a narrative once again. We had the Hong Kong ETFs, US spot ETFs have already been there. So we kind of ran out of a narrative. I do think that there's a new one coming up soon, but I'll get into that later on in this video. And that's why the price has been drifting downwards. A lot of ETF outflows, similar to the ETF outflows that we experienced over here. So the price action and the fundamentals are pretty similar to what took place between Jan to February. But if Bitcoin is able to break back in, break back into the price action and kind of, become bullish once more on the 4-hourly time frame, and I'll talk about probabilities, then I think I'm full bull mode for Bitcoin. Honestly, I just added more capital to my long position. I was planning on adding $200,000 worth of leveraged longs to my existing position, but I've added basically approximately 25% of that because I want a confirmation of us breaking above this neckline at 64.6. So if you want my kind of summary on this particular price chart, if Bitcoin breaks above 64.6K with a confirmation and we start trading above the upper Bollinger Band, then I think Bitcoin is set to go and reach $73,000. Because if we do want a target for this inverse head and shoulders pattern, just like this here, you need to measure the height from the head to the left and right shoulders neckline. And by doing so, you got a perfect target for Bitcoin, which took us all the way back to initially 48K, and of course Bitcoin then continued to rally towards the $70,000 territory. So if we do put this above the neckline, we do get a 73.7K Bitcoin, which would be a perfect target, as this would take us to the prior all-time high where a lot of liquidity is being built up. So that's exactly what I'm looking at. I think 64.5, 64.6 is the target for Bitcoin to break above. Will we face resistance along the way? Of course, 66.7, then 69.1, and finally 71.2 before we end up hopefully reaching back towards the prior all-time highs. But moving on, I've seen this a lot on YouTube and a lot on Twitter, resurfacing that Bitcoin is forming a falling wedge pattern on the daily time frame. And you know what? I think it's true. Like Bitcoin it's an undeniable fact that Bitcoin is forming a falling wedge on the daily time frame. And yet again, I think this works out perfectly with our inverse head and shoulders pattern too, because the break of this inverse head and shoulder, break of this falling wedge comes a lot sooner than the inverse head and shoulders. So I think if we do end up seeing a break above, then we get that confirmation above 64.6K, it could be an interesting time to be entering into long positions. So to go into a long for Bitcoin, I am waiting for this break and confirmation of 64.6, and that would also be causing Bitcoin to go above the falling wedges upper bound level of resistance. So 64.6, in my opinion, is the point to be waiting to enter into long positions. But of course, nothing in this video is financial advice. This is what I'm doing. Always do your own TA and come to your own conclusions before trading or investing. But this is a happy thing because Bitcoin has recorded the highest number for the 200 period moving average on the daily time frame. We can see its importance because Bitcoin found resistance at 47K back in March 2022, dumped approximately 67%, and then back in 10th of March of 2023, so 1 year ago, Bitcoin found support here and continued rallying back up. So 50.5K is now the 200 period moving average level for Bitcoin on the daily time frame. That is a new record for Bitcoin. Now, if we jump into a bit more of a macro-based analysis, why am I saying 64.6 or even potentially 65.6, so $1,000 more to enter into a full long position in terms of a bullish confirmation? Well, I've been talking about Consensio a lot, right? Consensio is taking place here on the weekly and 4-day moving averages, but actually I will jump into the 4-day in a second. On the weekly time frame, I want to have a look at not Consensio, I want to have a look at the Lucid SAR and also these bullish reversal hammer candles. We can see that Bitcoin, we talked about this on the last video, whenever we're in this parabolic stage, so if we look at the parabola at the same time, whenever Bitcoin is in this parabola, we kind of seem to reverse to the 30 period moving average on the weekly time frame, create a reversal hammer candle, and then continue bouncing towards the upside. Could this be the same scenario? Well, I think it's possible. We just need to close this weekly candle, which will end in 4 days and 5 hours, above the close of last week's hammer candle. If we do see this week's candle closing above 64.1K, then I think Bitcoin is again set for a bullish trajectory towards the upside, at least in the short term. And hopefully that will give us the opportunity to have a bullish crossover in Consensio. So if we go to the 4-day time frame, Consensio, so the 3 and 10 SMAs, are currently bearish. And my bullish and bearish allocations are mostly taking place on the 4-day time frame with these specific moving averages. So if we do get a bullish confirmation and we do see the current candle for Bitcoin, the current candle on the weekly time frame closing above the prior close of last week's weekly candle. Those are two very strong indications of a bullish Bitcoin reversal towards the upside. But we do need to be careful of a potential descending triangle, right? So Bitcoin is at a very risky stage. And I am saying a lot of targets for Bitcoin to surpass in order to continue upwards because we are in a dangerous level. In the event that Bitcoin dumps below 61.1K and below 59.7, which is the average short-term holder price for Bitcoin, where most of the short-term buyers are accumulating, then I think a retest back to 58K will be possible. And in that event, we could even expect lower prices for Bitcoin. So on the lower bound, 61 is so crucial for us to hold in order to continue the bullish momentum towards the upside. So 61 and below is a lot lower Bitcoin. 64.6, 65.6 and above is a higher Bitcoin in the midterm. That is my overall kind of view for Bitcoin in terms of a technical standpoint. But I just do hope that Bitcoin holds this parabola. I hope we do see a bounce because in a parabolic structure, there is 1, 2, 3, and 4 bases. So far we've completed base 1, base 2, base 3, and base 4 would be completing for Bitcoin. And at this point, if we do see a bounce here, then we should be seeing one more leg towards the upside. And my target for one more leg upwards would be at $92.5 to $93,000. That is what I'm looking at for Bitcoin in the next 3 months if Bitcoin can bounce from here. Maybe not even 3, maybe 1 to 2 months actually, but it will all depend on how the Bitcoin price action is kind of acting here. Look, if we go into what happened after the ETFs, we saw that the weekly candle following the hammer was also some sort of a consolidation candle. The price didn't move much, but at least we closed higher than the close of the hammer before, and that's what also happened back in 6th of March. And you can also kind of see a smaller scale hammer candle on the 12th of June in 2023 at the same time as well. But Bitcoin is holding the 21 EMA, which is a part of the bull and bear market support band, and that's a great thing if we can stay above, and hopefully we can make it back above this resistance line, resistance/support that Bitcoin has been forming ever since 2015. If we manage to make it back above, then new all-time highs can be expected. If we get rejected from here, then Bitcoin can come down lower. But is this a top for Bitcoin? Will we create lower lows on the monthly time frame? I really doubt that, but a low can be created. Is this the low? That is the question. But in terms of the macro cycle top, I do not think that it's in yet, because the pi cycle top, which is a super accurate indicator in terms of timing where the Bitcoin tops and bottoms are, it's not flashed yet. So I think Bitcoin in this cycle specifically has a lot higher to go. But interestingly enough, Bitcoin bounced perfectly from the 21 period moving average. If you do conduct TA for the weekly time frame, I would definitely recommend using the 21 EMA alongside Consensio, because you can see that the stock market also bounced perfectly from the 21 EMA, and this kind of correlation with the 21 EMA suggests that Bitcoin and the traditional stocks are moving at a similar pace. I think the stock market is very much overvalued. The reason why we're pumping is because the stock market, or the stocks overall, have been giving the highest earnings in many years. So that is super bullish for the stock market, but a couple of macroeconomic factors, which I'll be getting into soon, may change your mind on where the stock market and the overall economy is heading, because it is super concerning. So even though in the short term the economy looks like it's going to be doing good for maybe a couple of more weeks to months, but in the macro scale, I think we are due in for a huge recession, which would create a great buying opportunity all across the board. The Bitcoin CME gap closed perfectly, so there are currently no open CME gaps for Bitcoin. At least I think there's one open at like $9,000, but so that is a good sign. The Bitcoin CME gap is closed, and we do have a bearish divergence here on the MACD monthly time frame. Look, this bearish divergence is concerning, but even if Bitcoin goes to 90K, I think this bearish divergence will still be active. There's a possibility of invalidating this bearish divergence, but it's just something to be keeping an eye on for the upcoming weeks and months. And I will be talking about this more as the price progresses. Is it a warning sign? Yes. Is it a warning sign to maybe not be 100% in Bitcoin long positions, but maybe a split between 60% long and 40% cash? Could be, right? But it just all depends on your personal risk management. I am not trading the monthly time frame at the moment. I'm currently focused on the weekly time frame. But if I were a position trader focusing on the monthly time frame, I would be out from Bitcoin. So if that applies to you, then that would be my analysis for the monthly time frame. Now look, Ethereum is not looking too good in all honesty. The reason being is because we have a lot of bearish news for Ethereum specifically. So before I go into the breaking news for crypto as an entire sector, maybe it's a good idea to kind of cover what is going on with Ethereum specifically. So there is being a lot of delays for the Ethereum spot ETF by the SEC as we predicted. I just don't see an approval of an Ethereum spot ETF taking place on May the 23rd. I just really don't see it happening, especially after watching the interview between Chair Gary Gensler, not chair, but the head of the SEC, I don't know what it's called. Yeah, him and Andrew Ross Sorokin. I am much more affirmative that the Ethereum ETF will not likely be approved on May the 23rd. And what we're seeing is actually Grayscale withdrew their 19B4 filing for Ethereum, something that we did not see with the Bitcoin ETF. So if we're making a comparison of timelines, there is absolutely no correlation. I think it's still super early days for Ethereum, and we have at least a year or more so to go until we do get Ethereum ETFs on the market. But I think in terms of a lawsuit as well, we were talking about with James Safard, our interview with James Safard, which I'm aiming to bring again to discuss in more detail and look into the Ethereum spot ETFs. He was mentioning that it's possible that all the ETF issuers from Bitcoin, they come into a coalition and kind of sue the SEC to launch these Ethereum spot ETFs. But what we're seeing with the recent developments is I think, so James is saying here that withdrawing and refiling is less work for the SEC, but at the same time, it means there's no way for Grayscale or anyone to sue now. So the likelihood of suing the SEC to get the ETFs approved and lobbying against the SEC have dropped down significantly. So I think we could be kissing goodbye to an Ethereum ETF, but hopefully I will be having James on the channel relatively soon to get his entire take on it. But if this is the case, then Ethereum could be on the last strand of its run. And yes, I was saying that Ethereum is looking bullish, but honestly, this development was something that I was not expecting at all. So this is overall pretty bearish. But that is pretty much it with the Ethereum spot ETFs. Eric is saying that now they'll probably focus on their mini Bitcoin ETF, and Grayscale would not sue. Simply, they wouldn't sue the SEC because now we're seeing with Hong Kong, demand for the Ethereum ETFs are already pretty low compared to Bitcoin. They wouldn't be making much money anyway, so the suing process, the lawyer process, it would not be profitable for Grayscale in the long run because BlackRock will attract all the investors anyways. So it wouldn't be making sense to them. If there's anyone that will sue the SEC, maybe it could be BlackRock in this situation. But now let's go over, actually, you know what? We were talking about the Bitcoin ETFs, so why not go over the Bitcoin ETFs first, and then we can head into the breaking crypto news. So first thing is first, a tremendous thing happened, and I alerted this on the Telegram community as soon as we got the ETF inflow numbers on Friday. So for the first time ever, Grayscale actually reported inflows since the ETF launches on January 11th. That is absolutely huge. And this is taking place, these inflows, especially the inflow that we got from the 3rd of May, Friday last week, this is taking place after we saw a dump on Bitcoin. So this really surprised me. And I was expecting the price action to completely skyrocket towards the upside, but the price didn't do it. So that's why I didn't make a full video because honestly, as soon as I did see this data, I was really tempted on making a video saying, okay, look, we got inflows into Grayscale for the first time since January 11th. And on top of this, we had 2 days of Bitcoin dumping because the ETFs report on a 1 to 2 day transaction period. So in that kind of T+1, T+2 standard, Bitcoin was dumping, but we still got Bitcoin ETF inflows almost all across the board. And that is incredibly bullish. So hence the price of Bitcoin should be reflecting very much bullishly, but I guess that is not the situation. Even after we got ETF data on the 6th of May, that we all had also ETF inflows mostly across the board, the price of Bitcoin is not seeing this as a bullish factor. If we look at Hong Kong, the inverse is happening. We're seeing outflows, but it's like $900 million, so would not impact the market anyways. But I think the reason why the market is not pricing in the fact that we're having inflows all across the board, specifically from Grayscale, is because the market is maturing, and we know that a lot of these advisors, a lot of these huge companies are holding Bitcoin. And that is an astronomical thing. Like, we're seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different RIAs, investment houses, massive institutions, pension funds going into Bitcoin, holding Bitcoin, and reporting the fact that they do hold these Bitcoin ETFs, and Bitcoin is not moving upwards. That is very, very interesting to me. And we can see that Eric's comment was that, as we said, outflows will happen, so will inflows. But over time, two things tend to be true for ETFs. Number one, net growth, and number two, relatively strong hands. And to back this argument, we can see that the short-term holders of Bitcoin have not been selling, regardless of how much Bitcoin has been dumping. If you go back in history, whenever Bitcoin has a fatal crash downwards, the short-term holders immediately liquidate their hands. But because during this parabolic phase towards the upside, most of the demand that we've been seeing into Bitcoin has not been from retail, but actually from institutions, now that the price is falling, we're actually seeing short hands not sell their Bitcoin. And as a matter of fact, like Eric said, they are diamond handing and holding for the long run. And on top of this, we're seeing long-term holders for Bitcoin and whales actually that hold between 100 to 1,000 Bitcoin, which is between $6.5 to $65 million worth in dollars respectively. They are accumulating Bitcoin at the highest level in history. So if this doesn't mean something to you, then I don't know what will. And it's the exact same thing that is giving me, alongside this ETF news, the kind of intuition that Bitcoin will stay in the parabola and continue pumping towards the $90,000 territory. And that's the reason why I really want to be adding more to my long positions, but my technical principles are not allowing me to do so until we get a break above 64.6 with a confirmation, because there is still a monthly or a macro chance that Bitcoin creates a lower high at price levels towards the $52,000 region. But I believe this is incredibly bullish, and also massive congrats for Bitcoin on hitting 1 billion transactions. That is absolutely crazy. It's a huge milestone. 1 billion transactions processed with 200 million people using Bitcoin in a matter of only 15 to 16 years. I think Satoshi would be incredibly proud well, he may be proud right now if he's alive. And crypto funds saw the largest weekly outflows in almost 2 years. Now, this is going back to the FTX dump. So the amount of inflow of capital from ventures is a huge kind of indicator of if Bitcoin is going to be pumping up, or are we going to be entering into a downtrend? Now, the way that venture capital works is they want to see a clear confirmation of trend before flowing capital into the crypto space or taking capital out. We can see that the last time that they injected millions of dollars was during December of 2023 and January, February of 2024. The exact time when Bitcoin started rallying from 48K up to 75K. Perhaps they were confident more on the ETF, spot ETF launches, and also projected that the price of Bitcoin will continue increasing. So that is the kind of time where we started seeing more altcoins and more projects launching in the crypto space. Now that the hype has dropped, they're removing capital. I think that is a warning sign. And the biggest warning sign that we're seeing here is that altcoin season will likely be delayed. Because if we're not seeing funding from venture capitals and we're not seeing new ICOs being launched, then altcoin season will get delayed. And I think this is the biggest kind of indicator of that. of that particular matter. And the final breaking news that we'll be touching on today's video is that FTX is going to fully reimburse creditors. But hold on, here's the catch. So FTX went down at the bottom of the bear market when Bitcoin was trading sub $20,000. And look, the investors will get paid everything that they had in terms of a cash equivalent. And yes, they will be getting approximately 9% interest for most creditors. So let's say they had $10,000 and they're going to get $10,000 plus 9% interest. But hold on a second, Bitcoin is up. Bitcoin is up almost 4x since FTX went down. So technically they should be getting 300% interest rather than 9% interest. But hey, that is the thing. And that's also the thing with Bitcoin ETFs. If the Bitcoin ETFs were ever to go under, which will never ever happen, you're only going to get your cash equivalents. You're not going to get the Bitcoin equivalents. And that is the best reason and best example on why you should be storing your crypto on your hardware wallet and not your exchange. Because if an exchange goes down, then they will probably be legally obligated to pay you back what you lost or what they took from you, but they will give you the cash equivalent of what you had back then, not the crypto equivalent. So just something to keep in mind. And of course, the final thing, because I did forget to get into this, is the 13F filings for Q1. Now, May the 15th is the final deadline. May 15th is the final deadline for all of these big institutions to submit whether they hold Bitcoin ETFs or not. This is something that we've covered multiple times on many videos. So again, I won't go too much in depth into it. But basically, on May 15th, all institutions that have over $100 million of assets under management have to disclose to the SEC if they hold Bitcoin ETFs or not. Now, Bloomberg's prediction of how many asset managers that we would see holding Bitcoin ETFs was 7 to 8. They were in the double digits. So far, we've received over 200 of these institutions holding Bitcoin ETFs, some of them the biggest in the world with tens of billions of dollars worth of capital in them, and we still have approximately one more week to go. And what one of the analysts are saying is that we usually wait for the May 15th deadline. So the May 15th deadline is usually like we wait until that happens, and on May 15th we get an even larger number of companies reporting that in fact they do hold Bitcoin ETFs, or that's what happened prior in history with different assets. So expect a lot more of these institutions to publicize that they hold Bitcoin. And I think on May 15th, we will see some shocking companies that will be the next narrative to pump Bitcoin back towards the all-time high. So I am saying this now. And I did say that I will mention the next narrative in this video, and that is exactly it. I think some shocking companies will be revealed, apart from the shocking ones that we've already seen, that they actually do hold the Bitcoin spot ETFs. So ladies and gentlemen, this video has been a long one, but it's going to be a series of 3 videos. Okay, so the next two more videos after this are going to be so important that you do not want to miss. I just didn't want to cramp everything that I had in one video and just vomit it all out, because really it's a lot of information. So watch the next 2 ones, definitely, and I will be posting a full research report that is going to be taking so much time on the Telegram community. So if you want to join, use the link on the top right-hand section. It is absolutely for free at the moment, but I will be making it paid because I am spending a lot of time preparing these research reports, and I think there should be a monetary value in return. So I'm not going to make it too expensive. It's probably going to be a monthly subscription, but honestly, if you do want to get a full comprehensive breakdown of macroeconomics, fundamental news, on-chain analysis, and technical analysis in one shot, stay tuned on this channel and on Telegram, because I will be posting more and more of these research reports. I'm debating whether if I should go into the macroeconomics, because there's just so much that I want to cover in the next videos too. But look, I'll just say this. Social Security is expected to run out of funds in 2035. And what is Social Security, you may ask? Social Security is the kind of pension that pays a majority of retired US employees. So if a pension fund, if you want to look at it in terms of, in that context, if a pension runs out of money, then retired people will not be getting money in their retirement. That is a huge Ponzi. So just another reason why you should be preserving your wealth if you are getting some sort of a salary or if you are going to be getting pensions in the future. Maybe you want to preserve your wealth in a different asset other than fiat and relying on state pensions. And I think the way to go would be, in this case, Bitcoin. And look, I know we talked about the increasing M2 supply, the fact that the money across the United States or across the world in terms of dollars is increasing once again. But we can see here that the amount of money that the population received from the COVID stimulus checks, that is running out. And people are actually dipping into their savings right now to be able to sustain themselves. That is incredibly bearish because nearly 40 million families, or 29% of the US population, have jobs but struggle to cover basic needs. And we're saying, okay, the labor market is doing well. The US job market added hundreds of thousands of jobs, the greatest increase in so many years, but that is not the case, ladies and gentlemen, because clearly people are taking 2 or more jobs because they cannot sustain themselves. And even though that the labor market does look healthy on paper, that is clearly not the case. And Berkshire Hathaway, one of the biggest investment companies in the world, run by Warren Buffett and previously Charlie Munger, they have $190 billion worth in cash waiting in the sidelines to be buying the dip. So if these guys are doing it, then I don't see why we shouldn't have cash on the sides to be buying a massive recession, because the yield curve is currently inverted for over 500 days now, meaning short-term bonds, so short-term maturity bonds, have a very high level of interest compared to long-term bonds. This means that people are bullish only on the short-term economy rather than the macro economy for the United States. And I would agree, because the macro looks very, very concerning. And the last time this happened was in 2008, around the Great Depression in 1974. And in each and every one of those, the markets decreased by 50%. So do keep this in mind. A massive recession is coming. It's just a matter of time, not if. Okay, but I will leave it there. We can see that bond issuance, because we were talking about bonds, it hit $1.9 trillion, surpassing the 2008 financial crisis levels. There is a lot of geopolitical stress again heating up. We're seeing China, Taiwan, US, we're seeing Israel, we're seeing the Rafah situation unfolding. On top of this, we have the potential, God forbid, of Egypt getting involved. So stress all across the world is pretty high. And maybe that could be the triggerer of this potential recession that we see, but it's not looking good, ladies and gentlemen. I got to be honest with you. We're also seeing some movement with Russia. So just be careful, guys and girls. It's going to be a tough time in the markets, but I will be here regardless of exams, regardless of whatever, to help you navigate through it. But I know it's been a 32-minute video. I know I've not made a 32-minute video in such a long time, but honestly, for this much in-depth analysis, we cannot just zoom onto one chart pattern and discuss that as a potential trade idea. I know that is what you want because you have low dopamine, so do I. But we have to make these longer videos if we want to get a bigger picture of what is happening in global markets. But with that said, guys and girls, thank you so much for watching. I'm going to end it off here. Make sure to turn on the notification bell to be alerted for the next 2 very important kind of sequels to this video. So stay tuned, everyone. Have a great day, and I'll be seeing you all very shortly. So guys, take care and bye-bye.